Welcome to my podcast, Worlds Collide. I'm the host of the show, Victoria Daute, and I talk with my international guests here in the show about the experiences they made in their new country versus their home country. Hi there! So in today's episode, I talked to Mariela, who is originally from Toronto in Canada, but she lives in Buenos Aires since 1997. She works there as a teacher, but originally she came to Buenos Aires to go to university, but dropped out because she thought she failed. But that was only because of a different grading system than in Canada, and she found out years later that she would have passed. Well, she still decided to stay because of her friend groups and a different lifestyle that she really liked, and we will talk about that. And we talk about cultural differences, Argentinian men, or famously macho men. And also we talk about raising children in Argentina and many other interesting things. So listen in. Here it is. Hi, Mariela. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good too. Thank you. So you are right now in Buenos Aires?
That's correct. I am. And it's a bright sunny day as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in Buenos Aires now?
I've been here on and off since 1997, so a really
Oh,
long time.
okay. And where did you move from?
I originally lived in the suburbs of Toronto, Ontario, in Canada.
Okay, so, and now you would say you're probably already an Argentinian more than a
Well,
Canadian?
yeah, well, no. I have dual citizenship, so that's
Uh-huh.
something that is comfortable for me. But culturally, I wouldn't say I'm 100% Argentine. I mean, I speak the language, I have the cultural norms down, I understand what's going on, but I don't actually participate in everything.
Yeah, okay. Okay, what made you move to Argentina in the first place?
Well, when I left Canada, I was just finishing high school. And as everyone knows, university in North America is very expensive.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I was planning on studying something like literature or philosophy, something that, didn't have a very clear career path ahead of me.
Uh-huh.
So I thought that starting my adult life profoundly in debt and full of insecurity was a bad idea. And my mother is actually Argentinian, and she told me
Okay.
over and over again that the university here is free. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would come down and try my luck at the public university in Buenos Aires.
And did you speak Spanish at the time?
Barely, which was a big problem. I lasted at the university for around 3 to 6 months, something like that. Very little. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The funny thing is though, I was actually really unaware of how the system worked down here. So, with my limited Spanish, I would tell my professors, like, please grade my exams on the concepts and not on the communication, the expression that I'm using.
Uh-huh.
And so I got my exams back and I would get like a 4. So I thought I was failing miserably. And literally 2 years ago, I found out that a 4 in that university was actually a passing grade. I could have continued, and I gave up.
Oh no, and you didn't even know.
I didn't even know because I didn't have any friends at the time. I was just sort of like fumbling in the dark, trying to find my way around this huge university in a different language with completely different social customs.
Oh,
Yeah, like people were smoking in the classrooms at that point in
in the
1997.
classrooms,
There
really?
were there were stray dogs. It was different. It was very like culturally very different.
Oh wow, that is really different. And I mean, I don't know, like smoking inside and stray dogs also inside?
Inside, yeah, yeah, because yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
things
yeah.
have changed, yeah, but at that point in time, Buenos Aires was a little chaotic and very different.
Oh, that's crazy. And so when you found out 2 years ago, what did you think then?
I was very frustrated because I thought I could have done it. I could have gotten my degree, and in the end I didn't even try because I gave up very quickly. And so yeah, very disappointed.
I mean, also you are young at the time, so
I was very young.
that's also probably a big point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that must have been really frustrating. I understand.
Very. Very frustrating. But, I went out into the world of work. I started teaching English. I became a tour guide. I found my way into the school system as an assistant. So, it was interesting. It was productive. I found my way anyway.
Yeah, yeah. When you exited university, did you stay in Buenos Aires?
I stayed in Buenos Aires. I did not go back to Canada. I felt that there was nothing to go back to. I would have been on my own at the age of 17.
That's young.
That was very young. So I stayed in Buenos Aires where my mother was. I only lived with her for another 6 months before I moved out with a friend anyway, and I've been on my own ever since here in Buenos Aires.
And is your mother still in Buenos Aires or did she move?
She is. She's been living in the city for a really long time, and actually, I moved out to the country when my children were born,
Hmm.
and she just moved to my property a month ago. So she's living with me again after all these years.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. Full cycle.
full cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you first moved to Buenos Aires, what were the biggest differences for you?
Well, in 1997, Toronto was a very small city,
Hmm.
and Buenos Aires has always been just enormous.
It's big, yes.
It's so big. So I was literally seduced by the bright lights. Like I had been to New York, and I thought that this was more impressive. The nightlife here is incredible.
Hmm.
There's always something going on. There's always people on the streets.
Yeah, it's famous for it.
Right. You can always grab a coffee or food. There's always something happening. So that for me was a lot of fun because I was very young, and
Yeah, for sure. Like a big party city.
big
Hmm.
party all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the lifestyle is different.
It is. It's very different. The friend groups that I found were fantastic. And I began to understand a little bit about Argentinian culture, how the friend groups work here, which are a little bit different. It's kind of like people make friends when they're in primary school, secondary school, and university, and these
Hmm.
people are their friends for life. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so to be inserted into one of those groups was like really a privilege.
Hmm.
Sometimes very difficult. I didn't always make the grade, but it was definitely fun exploring like the different dynamics that people live here because friends become like family, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Are those friends still your friends?
No. No, since I no, no. When I had my first child, I was still living in the city, and I had a really strong group of friends. Well, not that strong, obviously, because as many women experience, motherhood. When you're the first one to become a mother,
Yeah.
I was 27, but my friends were not interested in the whole family deal.
Hmm.
So I grew apart from them, and I moved to the country. So yeah,
Yeah.
but I found living in the country, there's not that much to do anymore. It's not like Buenos Aires. So having a big group of friends or two is not actually necessary at all.
Did you move further outside of Buenos Aires in the country or like totally far away?
No, it's just 60 kilometers. Like if I grab my car, I can be in the city in an hour. It's not that far.
So, yeah, that's still pretty
It's
close.
not that far. Yeah, but there's cows in my neighborhood, so it's definitely the
Yeah.
country.
Okay. It's definitely
Yeah.
country. Yeah. What are the things that you adapted?
I adapted to the food here, which I love. It's the raw material is just so fresh. The vegetables have excellent flavors. The fruits are also spectacular. And I had to learn to cook, obviously, and I really took a lot of joy in this, in being creative. One thing I did not adapt to was the meat aspect because I'm a vegetarian.
They eat a lot of meat, right?
So much meat,
Yeah.
yeah, and I know it's very good quality. I know I'm missing out. I get told all the time, but that's okay. I will miss out. I will continue to go down my path.
I was in Argentina for, it's a long time ago. I was there for a few weeks and I was also vegetarian at that time. And people told me the same thing.
Yeah, you're missing out.
Yes,
Yeah.
they said, why don't you eat that empanada with beef? It's so good. Yeah.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure it is. Exactly.
So yeah, I adapted to the food and I adapted to the weather, which I love. Coming from Canada,
Uh-huh.
this is, luxury. Like winter here only goes down to maybe 1, 2 degrees in the
Mm-hmm.
winter.
Yeah.
And so, for example, I heat my home with a fireplace and nothing else,
Oh, that
and
is really
everything
nice.
is just fine.
And it feels really cozy
Yeah.
with the
Yeah,
fireplace.
yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah,
it.
that sounds
Hmm.
lovely. And of course, like the winters in Toronto were very like
Painful.
harsher. I
Painful.
mean,
Yeah, yeah.
lots of
Hmm.
snow.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't like the snow at all. I don't like the cold very much. So,
It's funny. People are so different. I just talked to one girl last week. She is actually my first episode, and she moved from Germany to Canada, and she loves the winter.
oh,
She loves the snows. She's so happy about the winter.
to each his own. I can't stand it. Also, before I lived in Canada, I lived in Australia. I spent my childhood there.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so it was extremely hot. So going from somewhere so hot to somewhere so cold, neither were great, honestly.
And Buenos Aires, it doesn't get too hot either
Well, we had a heat wave this summer as the whole planet.
everywhere on the
Exactly.
planet.
Everything is changing, unfortunately. So we had 2 weeks of maybe 38 degrees nonstop. Even at night, it would only,
That is
yeah,
hot.
at night it would go down to like 32. It was very difficult to sleep.
Yes, I know. I'm in Texas,
Oh
so
dear.
that's our summer too.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so sorry. That's difficult.
Yeah, it's the heat. Yeah, nobody really likes it.
Yeah.
Or most people don't, at least.
Yeah.
A few people love it, but
Well,
I'm not one of
I
them.
actually really like the heat, but this summer, those 2 weeks were a challenge because
Yes, and you
Mhm.
probably don't have air conditioning
No, what would I have that for? I'm surrounded by trees and I like the heat. So, but this summer, because of the drought, because the heat came accompanied by a drought,
no.
my trees lost their leaves. So all the shade that I'm used to enjoying
It was not
was not
there.
there.
Yeah.
So I was really hot, really hot. Yeah, I never thought it would happen, but here we are.
Yeah. I hope this summer it's a lot better.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed. I know. I
yeah,
know.
it's tough.
So you mentioned the food is so much
Yeah.
better, but you also don't have a lot of those fast food places
Well,
there. Probably different
yeah.
ones, but not it's not
No,
overwhelming.
no, no. There's
Like,
not a lot of chains happening here. Maybe you'll find some chain cafes because we're big on coffee culture. But then, we have the regular McDonald's and a couple of native, local fast food franchises, but they're not all over the place. There's a lot of independent projects happening, a lot of family places that exist. Even not even like old ones, some are new. They just pop up according to what the economy is doing, of course.
that sounds so
It
lovely.
really is because there's always somewhere new to eat, which is so much fun.
Yeah. I am all for it.
Yeah.
Totally. So you said you have kids, and how is it different to have kids in Argentina versus here, if it comes to parenting?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to know because I haven't left the country with my kids at all. So,
Okay. Oh, they haven't been outside?
no, 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 no.
Not even visit?
No, I wish. I mean, the economy here is just it's prohibitive, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a miracle that I'm surviving because
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
inflation and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult down here. But what I can see from my friends' experiences, because I have more than one friend who has become a mom. Education here is very expensive for me because I need my children to speak English. So I've sent them to bilingual
Mm-hmm.
schools that are private.
Okay.
and they are crazy expensive for what the minimum wage would be here, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Very expensive. But for me, it's a necessity because I can't have my kids not knowing English for personal reasons
Yeah.
and for the obvious reasons, of work, etc.
Yeah.
So, and I can see that my friends who live in England, for example, who have excellent education for free, and this liberates their pockets to take them to extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
So, one of them is in like the Rubik's Cube competition right now, just killing it. He's doing amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I have another friend who's in Colorado in the US,
Yeah.
and she has a similar situation. The schools there are great. So her kids learn how to ride horses and go
Yeah.
skiing, and, you know, and basically here, the because of the amount of money I'm paying for their education, there's not much else going on,
Yeah. Understandable.
that we're just sort of like, but at the same time, they have good friends. Like I mentioned, this is a part of the Argentinian cultural situation. They make good friends when they're very young, and they remain friends for a long time. So that's something I can see happening, and that's really comforting. It's very nice.
How long is the school day for?
It depends on the school, but basically they start at 7:30 in the morning
Yeah.
and they finish at around 3:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, it's very similar to the school where my daughter goes to. But I wanted to say that so I also have so I have two kids, and the youngest is in daycare.
Mhm.
And so here it's also very expensive. You all have to pay for your own daycare.
Ah,
And when I see my friends in Germany who have kids that are the same age as my son, and they send them to like all these like fancy daycares, super nice Montessori, outside all day. Um, I don't know, sounds really, really nice.
yeah,
And it's for almost free.
for
And here I
almost.
have to pay so much money for
It's so
even
painful.
just a basic one. So
Yeah,
sometimes it feels a little bit unfair.
it is unfair. There's so many things that are unfair. But we do have free healthcare.
That is nice.
That is
Yes.
something. Yeah. Although I do have to mention there's like a double tier system. So you can have private health care, which is favorable because when you do go to a public hospital, it is full of people. Most of the time it's collapsed. And the situation is not 100% the
What
best.
do you mean collapsed?
Like saturated, too many people, not enough doctors,
Okay.
right? Um, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So if you do have an emergency, and if you are for whatever reason taken to a public hospital, these are the same doctors that are working in the private healthcare system. So it's quality care, but you have to see if there's enough of them, if they can see you on time, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, I remember when I was in
Hmm.
Patagonia, I had a friend who had to go to the hospital, and it seemed very, very, very
Mm,
basic and very, very
hmm.
old.
Yeah, rudimentary, because the hospital depends on government funds, which are likely being
Mm-hmm.
stolen by anyone from any political party at any time. Yeah,
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
oh
There's a lot
no.
of corruption.
Because I thought, I mean, okay, so I'm not that into Argentinian politics.
Mm,
And I mean, you always see like, hey, Christina Kirchner, whatever, she's a woman in
hmm
power
hmm
that's already, you feel like, oh, it's so cool that you have a woman president.
It is, but then if you look into her situation, she has been on trial for terrible crimes. For example, supporting a bombing at a Jewish embassy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
covering it up. Yeah, and she's also been on trial for stealing millions from the Argentine people. She's a millionaire herself, which is funny for a socialist person to,
Uh-huh.
run their political platform on socialism when they are a millionaire.
Was she always a millionaire?
Sure,
Oh,
her and her husband. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she's not my favorite person.
I see. I had no idea about all this.
Well, no, I mean, the political situation in any country is a very personal thing. It's always very complex. There are many layers. Really, you have to investigate quite a bit to get a good grasp of what's going on
Yeah.
for sure.
So after all these years, it's 25.
25, 26,
25
something
years,
like
yes,
that.
that's a long
Yeah.
time. And do
Yeah.
you still sometimes have a few things where it's harder for you to comprehend, like culturally?
Sure, sure. I've never really adapted to the Argentinian sense of humor. There are very few comedians that I follow.
Uh-huh.
Um, these are, they're not the most popular comedians either, the ones that I like, because their sense of humor is quite dark. It's quite sexist. It's a
Oh,
little bit racist. And, as a Canadian, this is not how I was raised.
it's not
So
PC.
no, it's not PC at all. It's in order to be funny, they go the opposite route of PC and they go hard. So
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of hard for me to get my head around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I can't really watch TV here, for example, because I don't like the way they communicate things. But also that's a trend that's happening all over the world, isn't it? Like you turn on the news and there are people screaming at each other,
Yeah,
and yeah, I find that unbearable.
it probably depends what channel you're watching, right?
Right, but here it's on every channel, and
Oh.
yeah, they have gossip going on in the middle of the news, like celebrity gossip and just ridiculous things that I don't understand. I don't participate.
It's probably good for the quote.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anything else?
That I don't adapt to.
Mm-hmm.
The men.
Oh.
I'm
Are you
divorced.
married to an
I'm,
Argentine?
no, I was, but I'm divorced
Okay.
now. Yeah. And it hasn't been going well ever since. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I understand that, with online dating, once again, that's a global crisis too. No one is doing
Yep.
well.
So are they more sexist or what would you say the Argentine men? Just because you mentioned the humor is so hard.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I'm saying that.
They're definitely more sexist. It has to be said. Yeah, there's not a please. There's not a thank you. There's just a whole lot of, guys thinking that they deserve things that they really don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of testosterones.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah.
And no one's interested in a committed relationship in any sort of capacity, which for me, it's not comfortable. I don't want to be in an open relationship at all. That's not interesting to me.
Okay. But do you think it's like a big city thing or is this
No.
in
I
general?
No, no, this is what I'm finding in the countryside as well. I mean,
Oh.
yeah, yeah, there's like culturally infidelity is almost normal. And so that's something that I'm not comfortable with either, right? And people sort
Mm-hmm.
of accept it like, well, it happens. And yeah,
Okay. And usually is that the same for women or is this more just a male
it's
thing?
mostly men. It's mostly
Mm-hmm.
men. Yeah, I mean, of course, women in this day and age are beginning to, either take revenge or take a different stance, or so you do hear about it more often, but historically, it's been the men.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
yeah,
I mean, I heard from my South American friends about the men are like very dominant always.
yeah,
And so I think that's very similar to Argentina then.
yeah, yeah. Yes,
Uh-huh.
they definitely are in the ranking for like number one macho in South America. It's pretty bad.
Okay. Mm. Okay. Earlier in our conversation, you said your Spanish was very little in the beginning.
In the beginning.
How long did it take you to learn it and feel comfortable?
It actually took me longer than it should have because initially I made friends with a whole bunch of expats here.
Ah,
Yeah, because the dollar was 1 to 1, so there was a lot of people working here from Australia, from England, from the States, from Canada. So those were the people I was running around with, and I didn't really need to speak that much Spanish outside of the supermarket or a taxi,
sure.
and I could manage that. That was fine. Then when I went back to Canada for a couple of years in the middle. Then when September 11th happened, I came back here,
Hmm.
and that's when the expats started to leave. And because there was no longer a 1 to 1 convertibility on the dollar, and so I was forced to make friends with people who were local.
Yeah.
And yeah, and get a job where everyone spoke Spanish and stuff like that. So that's actually when I really, really, really took learning Spanish very seriously after 2001.
Okay, so that was then quite a while, though.
Yeah, it was quite a while. I mean, I could manage in the middle, but it wasn't great. Everyone was like, "Where are you from?"
Uh-huh. How long after that did it take you to be really comfortable?
Not that long, maybe a couple of years, but people kept on asking me where I'm from. That still happens because unfortunately I learned Spanish as an adult. So I don't have an accent, but I have like the wrong tone.
Yeah.
The musicality that I use is not exactly the same as Argentinians. So they either think I'm a terrible snob or I'm foreign.
Yeah, I mean I have the same. I'm in the US for over 10 years, but
Mhm.
you cannot drop your accent. It's always there. Like
No.
even if I want to, there's always a tiny little bit.
Yeah, there's always something,
Yeah.
something that makes someone say, "Wait a second, you're not from here." And it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh
you have an
goodness."
accent. Where are you
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes. And the Argentinian Spanish is also total different to the other Spanish. I mean the
It is.
shh.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Was
Yeah,
that
yeah, it's
how
true.
you learned though? Because of your mother?
Because of my mom and dad, they always spoke to me in Spanish at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I would answer in English because I wasn't interested in learning Spanish when I was younger. I was very
Mm-hmm.
silly, very stubborn. So I was always able to understand basic things. What limited conversation we would have at home. That was fine. I was not like in the dark or anything. But like I said, I wouldn't answer in Spanish. So
Yeah.
when I actually had to come here and understand people who were talking really fast about things that I had no idea about and then answer them, that was a challenge.
Mm-hmm. That will be my kids probably too.
When you take them to Germany?
No, I mean, when they will grow up. I mean, now my daughter speaks German to me.
Oh, that's
We have a
great.
German house, so
Oh,
my husband is
fantastic.
also German.
I see.
So, she speaks to us in German. But my son, I mean, he is 2,
Hmm.
but he speaks more English than German.
Yeah,
So, and I'm just like seeing or comparing my family to other families with
hmm,
a immigrating background, and I
right,
see like the kids there. If they speak the language of their parents, they say it. They speak with an American accent,
right, right.
or they don't, or they choose not to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's up to them. But, patience. I mean, my kids speak English not just because of the bilingual schools,
Hmm.
but because I have created rules, for example, that any media that is consumed must be consumed in English. So that goes for movies, for books, for music. And this really helps them to like saturate and be surrounded by English all the time. And they may not answer me in English 100% of the time, but they definitely are doing far better than their companions in their progress. So that makes me proud.
Yeah, that's nice. And what do you miss?
What do I miss about Canada? I miss grabbing a car and going to a lake and canoeing and driving an hour to accomplish that. In Argentina, if you want to go canoeing, you have to be prepared to drive 4 hours, 12 hours. It's a
Mm-hmm.
whole event. Whereas in Canada, nature was so accessible, it was just everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And that's not the case in Argentina. It's really a privilege to be able to get out into real nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like untouched.
Yes, I understand that 100%.
Do you have a similar situation?
To me, there is no really countryside here. It's just everything is just flat. Sure, you have a few lakes, but
Mm.
you don't have like lush green forests, or you have just shrub. So,
Oh, that's so sad.
I mean, when we moved here, it was nice, sure, because it was different. But now, after a year, I was like, okay, we've been to all the state parks,
Mm.
we've seen it all. It's not even worth going again.
Oh, that's so sad.
Before that, we were in California, and nature was so
Ah,
accessible, as you said.
yeah.
Like we were right there with the redwood trees.
Yeah.
The coast was there. The coast was so beautiful.
Mm.
And here is, I mean, it's just
Not
like,
the
I
same.
think it's harder when you're used to things like nature, and then you move to a different place that doesn't have it.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about like green, intense, dense foliage. That's an addiction right there. Because
Yeah.
yeah, because going out into the desert is never going to be the same experience. Like
No, no.
not even
I
yeah.
mean, it's a nice experience.
Yeah, and it doesn't really bring the peace that you're looking for, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
maybe is the idea. Like when I go to the ocean or the forest, I feel peace.
Yeah.
When I go out to the desert, it's maybe not so peaceful.
Yeah. And but it was also funny because when we were in California and we visited Germany and went to the forest there, we're like, "Oh, okay, it's just another forest." And now when I visit Germany and we go to the forest in Germany, I'm like, "Oh my God, this is gorgeous." It's like,
Yeah.
and I had no idea before I moved here that I would miss the trees so much.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy because people think you miss people or, specific places in the city. And it's like, no, I miss the nature.
I miss that too, but not as much. It's not
Not as
my
much.
first thing that comes to mind what I'm missing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, in Canada, I have barely any friends left because
Mm-hmm.
it's been so long. I have a couple of people I still communicate with, and that's really nice. And then the city has changed so much. I was there in 2019 for a stopover to somewhere else, and I ran around the city for a while, and it was so changed I didn't even recognize it. So,
Uh-huh.
I truly know that there's nothing to miss except for the lakes and the trees.
So you wouldn't even say that that is your home anymore?
No, no. And, people always ask me, like, what are you thinking? Why don't you go back? Why don't you take your children to Canada and raise them there? Because Argentina is so expensive and so dangerous, and the situation doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Yeah.
And so we have what's called a brain drain in this country. All the smart people leave, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "You're smart. You have a dual citizenship. Why are you still here?"
Yeah.
And part of why I don't go back is that, like, yeah, I don't miss anything. I do still feel Canadian because of the way I'm wired, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that if I did go back, I would be starting from zero for sure.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no foundation there.
You also mean professionally?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, because like I've been teaching English mostly in Argentina, and unless I want to go into ESL in Canada, which is a possibility because of the immigration level,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people arriving who need assistance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not unthought of. But yeah, I would be starting, of course, from a very like humble place.
Do you teach English at the high school in Argentina or?
No, I used to, but I sort of gave that up because it was so stressful. I mean, nothing like the stress level you would feel going to a school in the US, for example, of course. But for me personally, I felt like I was being well
Mm-hmm.
overworked. Like I have had jobs in corporations, I've had my own company, and I remember how hard I worked to achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
And working as a teacher, I worked even harder than that.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, and I was being paid very badly. And I had no
Yeah.
time for my children at all. And they were quite young at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really there was no work life balance
Yeah.
and the money was awful. So I decided to stop and do something else.
Okay, so where are you teaching now?
I mostly teach online. I was teaching online before the pandemic, but then the pandemic sort of intensified it and made my life a lot easier because everyone that didn't want to do it before was suddenly forced to do it, and this opened up a whole new audience for me. Like so many new people, so many new students were coming to me, and it was easier because I didn't have to travel anywhere. I just stay at my house and have one class after another.
Yeah.
So that's what I do now.
Okay, that's nice. Because I know many moms here decide to become or to work in the school because
Hmm.
just of the working hours, they're so similar to the children's schedule.
Right,
So they have
right.
time in the afternoon to take care of the kids.
Well, I don't know if it's different here because here, for example, after work, I was correcting exams or tests.
Oh
I
yeah.
was planning for new classes. It was a school that had the International Baccalaureate program, where, for example, we couldn't use photocopies. Everything had to be planned, like custom made for the class every year. You know,
Okay.
so there was a lot of work and time going into that.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I had over 100 students, which was insane.
That is a lot, yes.
Yeah, because that's 100 sets of homework to correct, 100 exams to correct, 100 family interviews to have.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
so I was literally burnt out. Like towards the end, I got psychiatric help because I couldn't deal with it at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good that you found something more suitable that
Yeah,
is
yeah,
also
something.
more comfortable working from home.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, much
Yeah.
better.
Are there things where you, besides the nightlife in
Hmm.
Buenos Aires, where you say that was so much better than in Canada? And the food?
Unbelievable. Yeah, and the food. Food is number one. Uh,
And the wine,
no,
probably?
and the wine. Oh my God, how have I not mentioned the wine yet? Oh my God. Yeah, the wine is great.
But you're not any close to Mendoza, are you?
No, but I've been there
Uh-huh.
and I did do a wine tasting at one of the bodegas and it was
Oh,
great.
I'm
It was
sure, yes.
fantastic. Yeah, nothing better.
Sounds very
Um,
lovely. Sounds like a
yeah,
really nice way to spend the day.
right. I mean, and you can do it like as a weekend getaway. It's 12 hours away in the car, but if you take a plane, you can do it like as a weekend getaway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice
Yep.
too. But I would say the difference that I felt here is that when you walk down the street in Buenos Aires, you don't feel alone.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's a weird thing to say, I know, but like people make eye contact and maybe even comment things to you in passing, or like if you're standing in a lineup, they might make conversation with you, or, and there's always people on the street. You never feel like, goodness, it's just me. And in Canada, that was a feeling that I got a lot, not just because I was in the suburbs and in the suburbs, very frequently you're the only person around and it's frightening.
Uh-huh.
Everything seems like a ghost town. But then in the city, people just don't interact. They don't even look at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me feel very lonely. I
Okay,
don't like
but
that.
Canadians have such a different reputation. You know, that they're so friendly and so nice.
They are, but they also have what would be called like an extreme respect for personal space.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I understand that that's what it is. Like they're not making eye contact because they don't want to invade your personal space. And everyone is always 4 meters apart. And I understand that that's a sign of respect. I totally do.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, Argentinians are on the opposite end of the spectrum. There's no personal space. So you're standing at a bus stop and you have three people like right here, and
Uh-huh.
people you've just met will speak to you 10 centimeters away from your face. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess I just got used to it.
And you also dance together with strangers on the street.
Well, that's never happened to me.
Yeah,
So,
okay. Okay. But I
but I'm
mean,
sure it's possible.
when I
Yeah.
visited, I noticed that they just dance salsa on the street all the time, and whoever was dancing with, like anybody was dancing with anybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like if there's music happening, then it's very likely that someone will get up and dance.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sure. Why not?
Yeah,
We have nothing to lose.
yeah. I personally wanted to go
Hmm.
back to Argentina. When I visited in 2011, I didn't have a good
Oh, I'm
time
so
because
sorry. Why?
I arrived in Buenos Aires and it was one of the cities where I always wanted to visit. I was so excited to finally arrive in Buenos Aires. I took the bus from Bariloche
Ah,
to Retiro
yeah.
and I just arrived and I got mugged.
Oh,
And
that's
and they
awful.
stole my whole backpack.
With all your passport and everything?
No, I had two backpacks, so they stole like my small backpack.
Aha.
And so I had my laptop in it. I had
Mm,
my fancy camera in it with
yeah.
all the pictures that I just took.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You know,
That's
and then I had
terrible.
my whatever, some like my favorite shoes and all this.
Yeah.
So it kind of ruined my whole trip then.
I would say definitely that is a very negative experience. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yes,
so sorry.
and it was just so stupid because they sprayed me with mayonnaise.
Oh,
Have you heard?
I've heard of that. Yeah, I have heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you're
Yeah,
panicking.
so they did that mayonnaise
Yeah.
trick on me. But whatever, I'm like covered in mayonnaise and I just like try to like wipe it off because I don't want to look stupid and run around with mayonnaise.
Yeah, of course.
And then whatever, when I'm like taking care of my dirty clothes, they just took my stuff.
They took your stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a valuable lesson. It's better to run around covered in mayonnaise than to clean yourself
for
up.
sure. So I still kind of want to give it a second chance because I think the city is just lovely. The architecture, what's going on there.
Yeah.
It's
exciting.
It's really nice, but I just was mentally not really happy at that time.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I'm so sorry. That just ruins everything, of course. Yeah.
So hopefully sometime I will go back, but I don't really know if it's a good place to visit with small children or if you want to.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's okay. Yeah. I mean, well, I can't speak from personal experience because like I've been here for almost 30 years and I've never been mugged.
Good.
I don't know how that's happened. Yeah, it's incredible. So, good for me. But and of course I run around with my kids all the time. I take them to the city, and there's no problem. I've never felt like I was in danger or anything like that. You just keep a good eye on them, and it's fine. So, yeah, if I were you, I'd try again.
I think I was just an easy target because I'm like fairly small and I was wearing like a bright yellow jacket and I have blonde hair.
And you had a huge backpack.
So I was like, oh, she is our target.
Don't use a backpack when you come this time.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It was great to meet you.
Yes, so that was my conversation with Mariela, and I found it really interesting that after almost 30 years, Mariela still doesn't 100% feel like an Argentinian. So maybe as an expat, that is something that is hard to achieve. But I mean, achieving is the wrong word. So I wonder if there are expats that at some point feel fully adopted. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that if you have listened to the second episode with Nadina from Argentina, who moved to the US, I thought that it was really amusing that both mentioned that they don't get the humor, just the other way around. So that must be something. I will look into that. And if you know someone in Argentina who wants or needs to learn English, you can reach out to Mariela for online English classes. Her email is marielaoreskovic@gmail.com, but I will put that in the show notes, and I will also put this on our Instagram side, Worlds Collide Pod, just one word, or you can email me and I'm happy to forward you. My email is worldscollide123pod@gmail.com. And there's also a website now where you can listen to all the episodes and find all the contact information too. It's worldscollidepodcast.wixsite.com, and I will also put this in the show notes. All right, thanks for listening. I hope I will see you next time.